Yo, what's up? My name is Waffles, and today I want to do a build guide. Specifically, we're going to be doing a mana-based ball lightning of static totem boy. And because totems weren't enough, we're going to be throwing in a turtle, a skeleton, and a torture device. If you don't know what I mean, I'm talking about the new Spectres, and I'll be explaining how all of these things work together throughout the entirety of this video. So if you're a veteran player or you just want the path of building so you can look at the numbers yourself, go ahead. It's down there. I made it myself. There's going to be a note section with a couple things that hopefully answer your questions, but knock yourself out, man. It's a good build, good damage. Speaking of which, the POB is not updated, which means these gems are not updated. So you're going to have to just trust me when I tell you it's minimum 3.5 million DPS on bosses. I would probably say closer to 4 to 5 mil, honestly, but let's play it safe when I set your expectations right. If you are a newerish player, then I will be explaining how I made my gear, what you probably could do to make it cheaper than what I did, because I do play only hardcore, so I got limited supply, man. You know, I gotta make what works. Sometimes it was more expensive. For you, though, if you're a softcore player, there's no shame in that, but you're gonna have a little bit easier time gearing than I did, so good for you. And I guess I would mention two things real quick. It is a totem based build, so there's only so fast you can map. It's a good mapper, but it's a totem build. You know, there's only so fast you can go, but you can juice your maps and play this build and you'll be completely fine. You're going to be very tanky and you'll still have damage to kill Kosis, for example. And a lot of people I know are curious, like, what content can this build do? It's a totem build. It can do literally everything. There's nothing it can't do. Personally, I didn't test ultimatum, but I don't see how this build would necessarily struggle. Just run in circles and put the totems down. Like, that should be... I'm not creative enough to come up with this myself. I'm pretty sure Rise QD, if you don't know who he is, he's a streamer. I'm pretty sure he slapped ball lightning on a totem, and that's where this started from. So, you know, I'll credit him with the original build idea. I feel like people don't do that enough. But anyway, let's get into the POB now. Alright, finally in Path of Building, where I spend more time thinking about how to play the game than actually playing the game. Let me know if that's relatable, because God. Anyway, leveling uniques. So this is the tab we're in right now. If you don't know how this works, here's your item sets. All four are here. I'll explain them when we get to that point. But for now, leveling uniques I use, that's right here. And this is what I used. I had an unfortunate disconnect rip on my first character, and this is what I had found. So I put these on and I leveled with them. Use whatever you want. If you want to use a tabula, go ahead and use a tabula. You know, you can level how you want. The build is strong enough, you don't need uniques at all. The ball lightning aesthetic is kind of nuts. And now we go to skills. So I would have to recommend you have to level as rolling magma. If you want to be fast. I say that because this is the speedrunner method. Level however you want to level. It's Path of Exile. Do whatever you want to do. Currently I'm leveling with the Hydra Race Spectres at 28. It's a terrible idea, but do how you want to do. But if I'm making a build guide, obviously I have to recommend the fastest way. So this is the fastest way. It's tried and true. Rolling magma using flame wall. Put the flame wall down, shoot a rolling magma. It makes it do more damage. Very simple. On your tree, so down here you can change these trees. So first things first, you're level 1 right now, so you're leveling rolling magma, and this is the tree you should use. You don't have to think about it in any particular way. You just follow the tree and go up and then stop around here. At this point you'll be 26, about to hit 28. Something big happens at this point, but it's pretty important if you've never done this before, so I'm gonna emphasize what I'm about to say. You switch to ball lightning aesthetic at 28. Ball lightning aesthetic is specifically a level 28 minimum requirement, so you can't level with it beforehand. Path of Building does not have ball lightning of static, specifically of static, in this yet, so I have ball lightning here. But please, ball lightning aesthetic is what I actually mean. This is just a placeholder. The order of these support gems right here are in the order you should add them in. So from top to bottom, this is the order you go in. Your curse is conductivity, just lowers lightning res. Determination for armor, because it's really valuable while leveling. You can just wear this and wear literally nothing, and you'll probably not die to one hit. Wrath, more deeps. Flame dash, second wind. If you have a socket for it, cool. Otherwise, not mandatory. Just for flame dash. Arcane cloak, arcane surge. So if you've never used these before, basically it's a guard skill slash a buff, and it does a lot of things. You don't need them while leveling, but I want you to level them. So start leveling them, put them in your offhand or whatever. I don't care where you put them, just start leveling them as soon as possible. Same thing with your Race Spectre. Level these level 1 as soon as you can. Race Spectre is level 28. The rest of these you can get around the same point. You'll be using these when you hit maps. You don't need to use them beforehand. Now we go to the tree. You're level 28. You're using Ball Lightning Aesthetic. Cool. First things first. Ancestral Bond at level 28. You can't deal damage with skills yourself, which means you can't deal damage by yourself now. And the totem is now you. You are the totem, and the totem is now you. You guys share stats. But this also means now you're purely based on your totems. So please take these. That makes your totems actually not die in one hit to a fucking Roa. Once you have this wheel, I don't care how you level the rest of the tree. As long as the first things you did was take Pursuit of Faith for your first ascendancy and Ritual of Awakening as your second ascendancy, I don't care how you do this. You can't mess this up. The skill is so strong, and I'm telling you to get so much HP. It doesn't matter what order you go in. If you want to get some damage, then hey, path this way, go up here, grab this. You want bigger HP and some res, these give you res, go down here, knock yourself out. I don't care which way you do it, just do it in any way you want. Keep in mind that because we are totem based, we actually don't have a lot of skills we use. That's just the nature of totems. That's why later on we'll be using specters and stuff, because you just kind of don't have a lot of things to use. But first things first, end game skills. These are your skills. Again, Ball Lightning Aesthetics here as a placeholder. Items. You're leveling uniques. Now we're going to go to starter gear. Specifically, what I'm talking about here when I say starter gear is that the stats I have here and the base I have only on the weapon. So Somber Scepter, I recommend this. I don't care what base item you use on the rest of these. Use what you have. But I would recommend at the very least you get a Somber Scepter. Now, you don't have to craft this stuff. You can just buy it. And I would recommend just the bare minimum of the stats. Keep in mind, cast speed basically does nothing. It is completely negligible. So you don't need cast speed. You don't have to craft cast speed. So what you're looking for is spell damage, mana, lightning damage to spells. You can substitute spell damage for lightning damage if you want, but if you want to, if you were like, I want to craft every single piece of gear, WAF, what do I do? Use a Wailing Essence or a Screaming Essence of Woe. You're in maps now, so smack this with one of those, and there you go. If you get mana, then craft added lightning damage to spells, or you can use the lightning damage to spells essence and smack that on here. They're both on the screen, so there you go. Your shield, buy it. Life, spell damage. You have plenty of slots to get your attributes and your res, so I would recommend on your weapons, obviously, just get as much damage as you can. If you're wanting to craft it though, Wailing or Screaming Essence is agreed, specifically Screaming, so you don't have to use Scours. Other than that though, there's really not a lot of good mods for essences on shields, and I really would not recommend using Harvest Juice on starter gear. You can buy this shield. Your helmet, life spell damage, it's pretty cheap, right? You can get 1 res on this, you can get no reses on this. You don't even need the spell damage, but I feel like I should be obligated to at least recommend you something that I personally was looking for. So here you go, spell damage on your helmet, some life. You don't even need mana. You can craft mana, you don't need it. You're just entering maps, you're a baby boy, you're a broke boy. Your chest, if you're specifically wanting to buy something you actually want, I would say good life, no duh, some armor, and then fizz damage reduction. I actually would recommend fizz damage reduction as the most important stat, and then armor. Because you are a totem based build, when you enter maps, you need to understand something. You are squishy, and you can't do what I'm doing in the maps where I'm running through delirium and altar based mobs with gain % chaos and stuff. You can't do that when you enter maps. You don't have a lot of armor. You probably won't have endurance charges. So you're a broke boy and you're weak boy. Life is hard right now. So this is going to help you significantly, where if you run in front of your totems and you get hit and you get stunned, you know, that hopefully this saves you. This is the biggest thing that made me feel like I'm strong now. I'm not terrified or scared for my life. If there was a piece of gear I would say you spend a little bit of money on, go ahead. Also, I used a 5-link until red maps, and I didn't use Spectres then either. So if you can find this setup of stats on a 5-link, go ahead. If you wanted to craft this, again, you're probably talking essences here, and if it's on a 5-link, I really wouldn't recommend Harvest Juice. So if you have some spare essences, maybe you hit your chest with stuff. High armor, like maybe if you get like 1500, 1600 armor would work too, but I'm just trying to really reiterate, you know, high armor or fizz damage reduction, ideally both. And if you didn't know, this is the only spot you can get fizz damage reduction. That's why I'm making an emphasis on this. Your gloves. So, ironic, the only other build guide I did, I recommend the gloves would be expensive. These gloves are a little expensive. You can buy the implicit on an evasion energy shield base. It doesn't matter which one. I'll look it up and see what the price is, or you're gonna have to hope for the long term. Now, this is not mandatory, but this is, you know, your starter gear. I would recommend getting lightning exposure fairly early, like after you have your chest with fizz damage reduction and you're comfortable and your tankiness off of it. I would probably start spending money on the gloves. Lightning exposure is essentially just pen, and that's really good. You know, we're not an inquisitor. We need pen badly. That's how we deal with rares. That's how we deal with uniques. Pen is good. So if you get life, you know, some suppression, craft mana on it. Obviously, same thing. Res, get res where you can. But lightning exposure implicit. It's an eater of worlds implicit. You know, blue juice if you didn't know. So you want the blue thing. You hit it on these. Hopefully you hit it. Sometimes it's expensive. On hardcore, they're 2 chaos for 1 attempt. In softcore, maybe they're, I actually don't know. I'll put it on the screen. I imagine it's going to be so cheap I'll be a little mad, but it took me like a divine to roll gloves I rolled. It was frustrating. For you, hopefully it's significantly easier. The boots, life, move speed, suppression, not much to talk about here. Amulet, you're going to want to anoint ironwood on an amulet that's decent. Ideally, you either get life or mana regen. Craft mana regen. It's going to really depend on your feel, right? If your mana is regenning really slow, then you're going to want to go ahead and get mana regen, right? If you're going to follow my setup to a T and not deviate by trying to manually run determination and stuff, then you're going to want dex. So strength dex, I would really tell you to get a citrine here, and then you can get dex on the amulet, and that should solve most of your dex issues for a while, ideally. Amethyst rings, this is going to be a broken record on my next build guide and the ones after that. It kind of solves a lot of your chaos res when you enter maps and you want life, mana, and some res. Nothing special. A Stygian is really good. I would actually recommend a Stygian early on. They're probably pretty cheap. I'll go ahead and take a look at life, mana with just some mediocre reses. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to wear a jewel that'll also give you some life, mana, and hopefully something useful. I really wouldn't recommend crafting your starter gear, to be honest. It's a bit of a waste unless, you know, like your chest, if your chest was 6 linked, then it'd be like, okay, yeah, use a lot of essences and stuff. But for now, I wouldn't recommend, you know, going after fracture bases. I would just, this is your baby gear. You just entered maps, slap some shit on and start leveling, you know? You don't have to overthink it. But if you wanted to go into the, I'm skipping starter gear, boy, I'm going straight to the endgame gear, well then, do I have some gear for you? Alright, so we're going for endgame gear and endgame tree. Again, you can do the tree in whatever order you want to do the tree. It really doesn't matter. You can get your mana first, you can get the suppression. It sounds like I'm being lazy, I bet, but man, it don't really matter. The only thing I would say is that if you're going to do the Spectres early on, then you're going to want to take Sacrifice with Convocation as soon as possible. This is mandatory. Even if you only run 2 Spectres and you don't care about the 3rd for a long time, just at the very least, Sacrifice and Convocation. The second you start using Spectres, give up damage or HP or whatever for this. Otherwise, it's going to just cost you money and you're going to have to trade more to keep buying them because they keep dying. Just trust me on this one. But the endgame tree is here. The jewels are here. Specifically though, the items are where we're going to start getting into the fractured essences harvest. I don't want to recommend you spend a lot of money on starter gear, because making gear like this or buying fractures are just going to be, in this case I bought a +1 low item level. That matters because I wasn't able to actually get a high item level one, which meant I couldn't get a high mana roll. So on paper this doesn't look that impressive, but that's, I believe, shrieking spell damage of an essence on the spell damage roll, and that's tier 3 mana, and I could only roll tier 2 mana max on this base, so it was like 8 mana off of the best roll I could get realistically. What you could do here though is, if you're like, oh, do I really want +1? Mathematically speaking, I'm 100% sure +1 is going to be better than added lightning damage, but what you can do is, if you want to make this and you don't want to just buy a good weapon, you can buy a fracture. So we're talking a T1 lightning damage to added spells if you want to min-max. Real quick, you can also get a fractured mana base. I don't know why I said that. Past Waff's a complete fucking idiot. Future Waff is way smarter. You can also get fractured mana and do everything that I just said. There you go. Or a T1/T2, spell damage fracture, or a lightning % damage fracture. Ideally, you're going to want to go with a fracture. The reason is because it makes up the money in the long term, as long as you're not overspending. But if you want to be close enough, I'll look up tier 2 fractured added lightning and tier 2 fractured lightning damage minimum, and they'll be on the screen specifically of Somber Scepter base. And you're going to want to use essences specifically. You don't want to use harvest. You're going to want essences for this. The logic is essentially the same no matter which one you have as a fracture. So if you have spell damage, then you're going to want to use the lightning damage to spells essence as high as you can afford. And what you're hoping to hit is mana, right? So you have one thing that's fractured, so it's guaranteed, it's staying, right? You're using the essence to guarantee the other prefix. So now the only other prefix you're rolling to hopefully hit now is mana. So you just keep hitting it, and eventually you're just going to hit mana. Suffix wise, this is where the build gets a little weird, but cast speed does nothing. So there's actually very little suffixes you can roll besides lightning % damage. That is significantly helpful. So realistically, I stopped here. Honestly, I should have just exalted this and hopefully hit lightning damage, but this was my endgame scepter. I couldn't get significantly better than this. This shield, boy, this is a complicated, and it's not cheap. I believe off the top of my head, it's minimum 4 divines, maybe 4.5, 5 to make this. And I'm going to use another website to show you how to make this right now. All right, we're in Craft of Exile. So again, I'm explaining this to a player who's aware of things but is not completely new. So obviously suppression is something that exists. We want suppression. You want to get a high item level shield. Shaper guarantees at least 84. So you can roll tier 2 suppression on any Shaper shield in the game. It doesn't even matter the base. It doesn't have to be this base either. It just needs to be at least Shaper influenced with ideally evasion energy shield. What you're looking for here is suppression. So you're going to go essences and you're going to go to scorn. This guarantees increased critical strike chance for spells. Now, if this is too complicated or whatever, you can literally just follow exactly what I do and you'll get the shield eventually. You click scorn, and let's say you're a little bit on the cheaper side and you get tier 3. You're using tier 3s, it's fine. You click it, and look, we hit tier 4 suppression. If you're extremely broke and you're like, man, I don't know about this, wear a spell damage shield. It's completely fine. I wore a spell damage shield until I started bossing. I cleared tier 16 maps on a 5 link. You don't absolutely need this, but hey, you've got money now, you want to make the shield, so we're gonna make the shield. You click this until you hit suppression. I mean, I'm just gonna sit here and click this until I hit tier 2. All right, here we hit suppression tier 2, and I have prefix. If you roll full prefixes, you're gonna have to annul. It's the simplest and easiest way. And keep in mind, yes, this is not exactly cheap, but that's why I said, it's 4.5, 5 divines, because the next 2 steps are guaranteed. So you've got some crit strike chance. We want crit strike chance to guarantee elemental overload to proc more. That gives you 40% more damage, but you need to consistently crit in order for that to happen. When you're switching to your 6th link endgame setup, you're going to use controlled destruction. Long story short, your crit strike chance is going to essentially go down to 0, which means you can't get that 40% more damage. So we have to get crit in just a few places to make up for that, so you can get back to that consistent 40% more damage. And mathematically, it works and it makes sense. So TLDR, get crit on shield, get suppression to not die, have open prefix, we win. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go to prefixes, and you're going to go down here to crafted, obviously in game, and you're going to go to prefixes. Jesus Christ, sorry, suffixes cannot be changed. God, suffixes cannot be changed. You craft it. There you go. It's not cheap. I think it's 2 divines to do this. Keep in mind, the prefixes do not matter here. We hit tier 1 mana. Man, that's really cool. It doesn't matter. We have to re-roll this. So suffixes cannot be changed. That means the fire res is locked. The tier 2 suppression is locked. And now we can guarantee +1 totem. You're going to go to your harvest bench. It's 5,000 blue essence. You're going to reforge influence. You need a sacred crystallized tier. So, just buy that. And then you need 5,000 blue essence. Hopefully you have it or buy it. And then you just reforge with influence. Specifically, reforge influence in the crafting bench. There you go. You guaranteed +1 number of totems. And then if you want to know exactly what I did, I crafted life and then I exalt slammed. So in this case, 70 life, right? So I craft 70 life and then you exalted it. There you go. And this is the exact fucking shield I basically hit, except I had end. And that's it. And if you want to keep re-rolling, then you leave a prefix open and you just keep going again until you hit mana. But otherwise, this is literally the shield I made. It cost me 4.5, 5 divines to make, even in hardcore. You literally may be able to buy this though from trade cheaper than 4 divines, because you're really just looking for tier 2 suppression. Tier 1 obviously would be nice, but tier 2 suppression's fine. And there you go. Shield done. GG. Now, helmet. At this point, it's going to be a reoccurring thing for me. You can't do fracture shield, right? Because fractures can't be on influenced bases like Shaper. Obviously, fractured weapon. Hey, guess what? Everything else I'm going to recommend you fracture. Your rings, the jewels, everything. Like, it's the easiest way to craft stuff if it's within reason. So helmet, I got lucky rolling this with just essences, but ideally you would get a fractured suppression or fractured life. If you want to make your life easier, I would get a higher-ish fractured suppression, because it just makes it easier for you to roll a really good fucking, piece of gear later. You spend a little bit more up front, but ideally down the road, you're going to get an even better roll than you could have bought it. In theory, sometimes you get unlucky, sorry. But yeah, you want either fractured life or fractured suppression. You roll it with essences. There's really no way around it. You can roll it with harvest juice. It doesn't really matter which one. If you want life, roll purple. If you want to guarantee chaos res, roll yellow, but obviously it's a little bit more expensive. Personally, I just use essences that I have. I use HP essences, screamings. I use screaming, wrath, whatever I got on hand that actually makes sense, and you'll hit it eventually. It's not a big deal. The implicits are mandatory. Fizz damage taken as lightning, fire, cold, it doesn't matter which one, but you want that fizz damage taken. You want to be a little bit tankier. And then lightning damage dispels. You can just straight up just get more damage. There's really not any other good option. If you absolutely want to min-max and you can do it, then you can have a better helmet than me, and you can craft fizz damage taken as fire on the helmet if you have an open suffix. So in this case, what I wanted to do, but I couldn't do, was craft this as well to get me a little bit tankier. But as you can see, I did all that content and 70% quality invitations without having this, but it would have made me feel a little bit better, but not needed. Your body armor, endgame. Basically, this is exactly what you would do. Fractured fizz damage reduction, and you roll this bitch the same way you do that helmet. You just keep rolling it until you hit suppression with good stuff. This specifically, this is using the Dread for armor, and I rolled OK life, good res, and tier 2 suppression. I was happy. I even had the open prefix to craft the fizz damage taken. That is mandatory. I would rather you lose an HP roll and just take a mastery on the tree for that 50% HP than lose the fizz damage taken as. You gotta understand, you're a Hierophant, man, you squishy. You gotta get that fizz damage taken up. So mandatory, fractured, roll that bitch, harvest, essences, whatever you got, make it work. The colors, keep in mind, the colors are a bitch. I literally just rolled this, evasion armor with at least one blue socket in the crafting bench, and I rolled it over and over again. I hit 2 blue, 2 red, and a green. I used Varici that I farmed myself, and I hit the green with a white socket. There you go. You might have to do the same thing. Maybe you can just buy a 6 white socket chest instead. However you get it, but at least 1 blue on the chromatics, and hope and pray. On your implicits, for Searing and Eater, gain endurance charge every 15 seconds. I would recommend this as mandatory. I'll explain how this tech works later, but basically this means you have permanent 3 endurance charges from now on. It's fucking sick, and it makes you feel even tankier on a build that struggles with fizz damage reduction, so we're happy. The other implicit, I would say Zealotry. I rolled a 1.5 divines worth of Eater juice and never rolled it, but Zealotry aura effect is what I would take instead of this minion shit. Your gloves, lightning exposure. At this point, lightning exposure is non-negotiable. It is way too much damage to pass up, and Unnerve works on totems. So Unnerve means that they take 10% more spell damage. Even though you aren't applying it, your totem counts as you applying it. You are the totem, and the totem is you. So same thing, fractured. I got lucky. I just rolled this with just random essences. I was essence farming beginning of the league with this build specifically, and I just rolled it. 9% suppression damage is it's good enough, completely fine. There's even charms that have suppression on them if you want to go that route, so you don't even need perfect suppression rolls, but you want cap suppression, it's important. And if you get mana, cool. It's going to be pretty hard on one of these pieces of gear. You have to just give up mana mathematically unless you're a god gamer and you can just make perfect gear. Boots, implicits, cooldown recovery rate. I'll explain, I haven't explained how the raise specters and everything like that works, but basically cooldown recovery is nice. Action speed is movement speed / cast speed-ish. So again, something useful. There's not much you can get on the boots. Nothing really special here. Same thing, fracture suppression or fracture life, and you roll it, you cap your attributes, you cap your res. You just use harvest juice and essences. There's really not much to say here. Amulet. Oof. I got really fucking unlucky trying to roll a life mana amulet, so I just bought a mana regen. I augment regaled this. Personally, I would recommend you use I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but if you really want to get an amulet just like this, I would recommend you buy a fractured +1 to lightning or +1 to spells, whichever is cheaper. Hopefully on a citrine amulet, and you would just roll it with lucent fossils, which are mana fossils, until you hit mana regen and good HP. Yeah, I mean that's really it. The only other thing I was going to craft on this was multi-mod, and I was just going to add a frenzy charge, but I was just done with the build. I had farmed like 50 divines at this point, and I was just feeling pretty good. I didn't really want to waste 2 divines on it, but that's what I would do, is I would craft minimum frenzy charge on this. If you want to copy exactly what I did, you augment regal alteration, and eventually you'll hit +1 with not shit life, or or you can augment +1 lightning, regal some garbage, and then just multi-mod it and then put life and mana on it. So that's one way you could do it. Or the smarter play is to just buy the amulet. Probably if you're on softcore, it's probably only going to be like 30 chaos, maybe more, probably not. Okay, rings. I rolled this with lightning damage essences. I'll put that on the screen, which one I specifically used. You absolutely do not have to do this. I would recommend you just get a fractured mana and then you just roll it with harvest juice. If you need chaos res, use yellow juice and you can get chaos res on it very easy. It's guaranteed. And yeah, you'll get something eventually. Fractured mana is probably the best. I imagine fractured HP is just going to be a bit too expensive. I crafted this ring with essences as well. I crafted the global crit with it. Don't do that. I just used what I had because I was just getting frustrated. Do as I say, not as I do. Craft this with harvest juice. Get a fractured mana, fractured life, maybe too expensive, but you know, fractured mana, and roll what you need. It's not too complicated. You can catalyst these with life and attributes. This is catalyst with fertiles, which are life, gives you 20% more HP and mana. And I don't actually think this is catalyst with anything. I think I was too broke, so you know, life's tough. The belt, same thing. I crafted this with harvest very early. I didn't catalyze this. I got 2 good reses and I wore this forever. The jewel, lightning damage to spells, global crit, useful, but you know, doesn't give you more damage, quote unquote. But life mana, you can probably buy this. You don't have to fracture this or anything like that. Just buy this. You're looking for life mana and then lightning damage to spells while holding a shield, and something useful on the other suffix. So res, attributes, you get the idea. So flasks. The suffixes, you know, get them where you can. They don't have to be obviously in this order, but gain charges when hit, and then yeah, reduced effect of shock, reduced effect of curses, increased evasion, increased armor. This is my golden standard. I pretty much use these on every flask setup on every character, unless, you know, for some reason I have to do something else. Corrupting blood on the life flask. I use immunity to freeze if I don't have the Pantheon to cannot be frozen, which is man, I don't even, where would you even, oh, here it is. So Major God, Brine King. Until you get Mervel, you know, avoid being frozen, which means you can no longer be frozen. You run freeze immunity on this, and then once you have freeze immunity, you, in my opinion, you put immunity to bleeding. Maybe other people would disagree. For jewels, this is a perfect jewel, I'd say. Sleepless Sentries gives you onslaught when you've summoned a totem. It's exactly what it sounds like, baby. You just get permanent onslaught. We in there. Cast speed don't even do much, but we get that move speed. We feel good. Basically, the long story short though is cast speed needs a threshold in order to actually give you damage. So all it really does is just help you cast your totem faster. It doesn't make the totem necessarily cast the ball lightning faster, if that makes sense. So you're not really gaining more damage until you can consistently have enough cooldown reduction. It's not possible, basically. That's the long story short. People much smarter than me explain that. Jewel, life, 2 sources of DPS. Not much to say here. If you need dex, if you need res, this is always a really good spot to get it. Okay, charms. Get at least 51% increased charge duration. The other, you know, stat, if you can get area damage or pen or, you know, totem taunt, go for it. I'm in hardcore. We've got, it's rough out here, bro. Everybody's dying. We got nothing. This is the best I could get. This is 5C. There was no better option. But get that 51% increased charge duration. It doesn't need to be more. You don't need more. Just at least 51%. You have permanent endurance charges now. You're golden. This pen and then recoup, at least pen. It's the only stat really on charms that we could get that actually gives us damage. So you want damage pen specifically, and then totem taunt. It would be what I would have liked. I couldn't get it obviously, or chance to summon an additional totem. So if you really want to min-max, that's what I would recommend. But you know, this is what I had. Watcher's Eye. I just took lightning damage while affected by Wrath. A Spectre is giving us Wrath. If you're wondering, hey, we don't have Wrath. There's a Spectre, it gives us Wrath. So you wear a Watcher's Eye with Wrath. We're not crit, so we don't really have many options here. This is only one div for me, and I took it when I seen it. And this charm is the best charm. That crit strike chance, if you haven't dealt a crit strike recently, is the biggest reason we don't need crit besides just on our shield. This means that EO is now permanently up, and then that extra chaos res with endurance charges you know, hey, we just get 15 chaos res basically. So this is important. I would say get high crit, 90% plus. It rolls up to 120. This just means you sustain your elemental overload a lot more. It means you're more consistent in your damage, which means your damage is now, you know, the HP bar goes down smoothly instead of it just being slow, and then all of a sudden it starts chunking. You want EO to be up as much as possible, so please get at least 90%, I'd say, something else useful. If you don't know how to do the Wildwood Ascendancies, look, it's RNG, bud. Like, I did it myself. I got all the charms. It's RNG. You just run in high tier maps over and over again until you finally find it. It's a bitch. It's a pain in the ass. It took me 4 hours to do it, but it's so worth it. So it is what it is, man. Okay, so now we're in endgame, baby. We're in maps. We've been leveling. We're getting our Spectres. Where are we going? What are we doing? Spectres. You're going to use, it's in the notes section. This is the name. These are the three. If you don't want to overthink it, buy these, summon them. Please remember that one, they can die and are not resummonable if they die. If they die, they die. You're going to have to buy another one. 2, if you take your gem out and you're, you know, in town, they're dead now. So if you're going to take your gem out, make sure you do it in your hideout only. If you do it in a map, you may not be able to resummon it because there may be corpses on top of it. So if you're going to take the Spectre gem out, do it in maps, or just, you know, never do it. Have your setup and then never move it ever unless they die. These are the names. So this guy is your Wrath Aura. It's a level 25 Wrath Aura, and he gives you lightning damage lucky. This Spectre is why we're so strong. Without this Spectre, I think I would be doing 2 million damage. With this guy, I think he literally gives me 60% more damage. He's goated, and he never dies. I only had to buy him one time, and that's just because I'm an idiot. And that's nothing new. The Turtle gives you Determination Aura. If you're in softcore, just do this. If you're in hardcore, I would actually recommend you Divine Blessing your Determination, and then just run this guy to give you Zealotry. He's really squishy though. He dies unfortunately, but he's probably cheap 2-3C. And if you're on hardcore, I would recommend you run Determination until you get like your chest made. Once you got that chest made, who cares? But personally, I don't want to risk that 1 second where the turtle is too far away from me to keep me alive. At least until I knew I had enough phys damage mitigation and I could take a hit. So now this is the setup I'm running. This is optional. And then Perfect Blasphemer. He kind of mid. I ain't gonna lie. If you want to just follow the build, he gives you curses. He uses smite, but it'll give you probably like 20% more damage maybe when he does finally use it. He's really inconsistent, but there's really nothing else we can use. And we're gonna be manually casting something, right? So we manually cast Zealotry. So basically, we're keeping these Spectres alive by supporting them with nothing but defense. Minion life, we want them alive. Elemental army, we're capping their res and we're giving them even more res. And then meat shield, they take less damage. We want them to survive as much as they can. And they only ever died one time ever when I had this set up and ready to go. I didn't even have them level 21. And it was only because of poison. Don't do poison maps if you can avoid it. Don't do chaos damage maps. These guys got no chaos res. You can survive, they can't. That's the difference. So you're gonna want to convocate them, and you're going to take this sacrifice. We want convocation. You put this on left click. Don't put Arcane Cloak on left click. You're putting this on left click. This will keep them next to you as much as you can. And because you're a totem build, you're probably going to be standing from distance against stuff that's like dangerous, right? So it just works out. Take this for that extra Spectre. This is how you get that Blasphemer boy, little skelly boy. And that's it, if I'm being honest. It's a little awkward at first, but once you set them up the second time, maybe because you fucked up and you ran a bad map or something, or maybe you took them out, they stay alive for forever. You can run maps and they're gonna just give you a ton of damage. They'll always be in range of you 98% of the time. They just give you so much damage. It's crazy that GGG put them in the game. I'm glad they're here, but I'm also like worried how much weaker a lot of these builds will feel without this tech. But they're insane. Run them in maps because your race Spectre will be high enough level now to actually use them. Now, mana based. So you're mana based. At this point in maps, at some point you can go mind over matter. 40% of damage is taken from mana before life. It's exactly what it sounds like. But you need to have a big enough mana pool. So once you got the Spectres going, you're now using Divine Blessing. So this means you're no longer reserving your mana health pool, because now it's your health pool. You're going to just be using Divine Blessing. You press this button every 10 seconds and it gives you damage. That's it. That's the tech. Put it on whatever. Got your curse, but that's really it. You're a totem build. So you put totems down, you press this every 10 seconds, and that's it. That's all you do. The only other thing you do is you press Arcane Cloak whenever you feel like you're about to take damage or you want a slight damage increase. But in terms of reality, Flame Dash, Second Wind, your Clarity, even though it's reserving some of your mana, the mana regen makes up for it. You're switching to Control Destruction at this point. We're dropping Added Lightning. Added Lightning 1 will not give you the same amount of damage as Control Destruction, and 2, it costs less mana, right? Oh, it doesn't. Oh, I just learned something. Well, it gives you more damage. I thought Added Lightning costed more mana. I thought it was like 160, but I guess I'm wrong. But anyway, Storm Blast Mine. So this is something you absolutely do not need to do every pack. In fact, you only do this against a boss. Maybe a unique, maybe a boss that has a an animation when it's waking up. Every mine you put down will increase the amount of damage that they'll take by 3%. This is 20 quality, so it says 4. You can do quick math. Hey, if I put 10 mines down, that's 30% increased damage. Wait, that's a lot of damage, right? Exactly. It's basically just free damage. You link it with this so you can get a chance to throw more mines. I forget, these traps are mines. Yeah, mines. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You never use this unless it's a really tanky boss. That's it. And if you don't want to run this at all, you don't have to. You feel free, man. You got enough buttons as is, right? Convocation's on your left click, and then Arcane Cloak is your shield and big damage. You want Arcane Surge linked to Arcane Cloak. What it's doing here is it's going to give you the Arcane Surge buff. Now, because Hierophant is weird, technically speaking, you're getting Arcane Surge here, but it's not the same. It's worse. It gives you less mana regen and it gives you less cast speed. We want that mana regen and that cast speed. Like I said, it's a quality of life thing, but it doesn't even give you more damage. But there's no reason not to run it to get more cast speed and more mana regen, right? So you link it to here, you press Arcane Cloak, it procs it. There you go, GG. Increased duration because you want it to last 6-7 seconds because it's essentially a molten shell. But that's it. Hopefully this is helpful. The next build I'm going to be making is Pure Spectres based on Hydra. I'll probably make a build guide on that. I was currently leveling with it right now, and then I decided I should probably make this. But yeah, I think that's it for me. Hopefully this is helpful. If you have questions, if you leave a comment or something like that, I'll read it. I don't care about interaction or anything. Maybe 2 people will ever watch this and it's useful for them. Cool. Hey, have a good one, man.